The next chapter in the Monsterverse, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, comes out in April. To celebrate, we're going through every film in the Monsterverse. This time, it's all about the big ape himself. Kong returns in his first movie since Peter Jackson's 2005 remake. It's Kong: Skull Island, here on the Atomic Lizards podcast.
And welcome to Atomic Lizards. We're a trio of friends podcasting about the Godzilla franchise and other films we love. I'm Miranda, the film fanatic.
I'm Udi, the de facto film expert.
And I'm Dan, the Kaiju extraordinaire.
And on today's episode of Kaiju Korner, we're covering Kong Skull Island.
A team of scientists and Vietnam War soldiers travel to explore the uncharted territory of Skull Island. While on the beautiful island, the group discovers their mission is more complicated than they thought, as they deal with the king of apes, Kong, and other mysterious and dangerous creatures.
Kong: Skull Island is a 2017 film directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts, produced by Legendary Pictures and distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. It is a reboot of the King Kong franchise and the second film in the Monsterverse. This film stars Tom Hiddleston, Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman, Brie Larson, Jing Tian, Toby Kebbell, John Ortiz, Corey Hawkins, Jason Mitchell, Shea Wiggum, Thomas Mann, Terry Notary, and John C. Reilly.
This episode will have spoilers, so go watch it if you haven't. Now let's get started. What are your initial thoughts on Kong Skull Island?
Alright, to start us off, I'll go first. Kong Skull Island, I've had kind of a tumultuous relationship with. I saw it in theaters, and I liked it, but, I wasn't, too blown away. And that's kind of just how I've felt ever since then. I've leaned more towards not liking it and then liking it more, kind of like every other time that I've watched it. So watching it this time, especially having watched a lot more Kaiju movies and Godzilla movies, it's definitely been interesting kind of to compare and contrast compared to my other viewings, and especially my initial viewing and everything like that. But yeah, there's definitely, for me, it's a mixed bag. There's some good and some bad, and it's not a spectacular movie. And it's definitely more in the lower echelon of the Monsterverse to me, but it's not bad, and I would say it's still totally enjoyable, and surprisingly pretty movie. But yeah, what about you guys?
All right, so I will go next. I liked this movie. I think in terms of monster movies or kaiju movies, it's nothing amazing, but I still really enjoy it as a fun just action movie, because now this is just my personal belief, and I'm sure there is going to be many that disagree with me, but I personally believe that this is objectively the best film in the Monsterverse, and the reason why I say that is because, one, I feel like the human characters were done a lot better in this movie than they were in Godzilla 2014. Now, granted, they may not be written the best, and they still, this movie's still full of dumb moments, that the human characters do, but I enjoyed these characters a lot more than I enjoyed the characters in Godzilla 2014. I think this movie also balances out Kong's scenes a lot better than Godzilla's scenes in Godzilla 2014, because and this is a topic we've discussed before, but one of the big topics with these monster movies is always the quote unquote screen time that the monster gets, and I feel like it's not necessarily screen time, it's more about how well can you balance the screen time of the monster with the other scenes in the movie. At least that's how I've been feeling recently. And I feel like this movie definitely balances that out a lot better. Because I never felt like there was too little Kong in this movie. Now, Godzilla 2014, I definitely felt at times that there was just too little Godzilla. Even though there are some scenes, I can think of one scene in particular where it's just okay, well, what's the point of this scene? I mean, there's Kong, he looks cool, but like, what's the point of this? So, but still, like, I like how they balance out Kong's scenes. I like the fight scenes; they're cool. They don't all take place at night. Some of them are in the daytime. You can actually see some of the action, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, there were a few moments in the movie that were really enjoyable to me. Like I love John C. Riley's character. Like I had a blast, uh, following his character around, and yeah, I thought it was pretty enjoyable. Not amazing, but I liked it.
I guess I will go now. So I watched this movie for the first time about 2 years ago. So I'm gonna read you my initial thoughts and my updated thoughts. I find this stuff fascinating. I don't know if you guys will, but I do. So, all right. So my thoughts from the first time I watched this, were that there's some really cool shots in this. Why does the military always shoot the creature? And there's many cool people in this movie, but they kind of just walk around on an island. So that's past me. Current me. Have to say, I love to see Kevin, Pillboy, and Link. Those aren't their real names, those are character names. 3 actors play from different things. I don't know their real names. I liked the video camera, old-fashioned video cameras in it. Very cool. Again, why is the army shooting things? The creature is not harming you, it's just there. Okay, one of them did step on a guy, but like you don't need to attack creatures so much.
Well, not only that, but literally, now this is because they were bombing his home, but Kong literally throws a tree at one of the helicopters before they even attack him. So, like,
Yeah,
why would they not attack him after that?
I don't know, maybe run away. Like, what's your guns really gonna do against King Kong?
It's the
Nothing.
U.S. Army. They're going to shoot at him.
Yeah. Hank, John C. Riley's character, is probably the best character. There's a dolly zoom in it, so it gets points for that. And I like the fact that most of it is in daylight, so you can actually see the monsters and see Kong and see what is going on compared to Godzilla 2014. It's like only 4 degrees away from Kevin Bacon, which is fun.
Nice.
And like you can see the texture on Kong's hands when he picks up Brie Larson, and also how is she not dead? And I kind of find most of the characters kind of boring and kind of flat. But we can get into that later. But it's a very pretty movie. It's like really well like designed for like if it was a painting it'd be like really pretty. It's very colorful, which is nice to see. Cuz gray darkness is not always fun. So to see that jump between Godzilla 2014 into Kong Skull Island is like a big juxtaposition. Did I use that word right? Contrast, maybe a better word.
You use that word right.
Yeah, so it was interesting to see that. But yeah, that's my general thoughts, I guess. That's not really anything in depth, but we could get into that now. It's interesting to hear your guys' initial thoughts. I have some questions for you guys, such as what do you think of the characters? What do you think of the story? And how does this compare to other King Kong movies? So, is there anyone you want to start off first with?
I will say, we'll save it for later, but that's a great question. How does this compare to other King Kong movies? That's one I'm gonna definitely have to think about for a bit. So I'm excited to talk about that question. But yeah, I do want to clarify something earlier because I said that I think this is objectively the best film in the MonsterVerse. It's actually not my favorite movie. That is spoiler alert going to be the next movie we're going to talk about. But Yeah, in terms of the characters, now I already said this in like my initial thoughts, but I really do like the characters in this movie. Now, when I'm talking about the characters, I'm talking mainly about like John Goodman's character, John C. Riley's character, and of course the Vietnam soldiers. I think that they're the best characters because, like, you look at Tom Hiddleston's character, there's really not much to him. He's just your standard like badass. Like the first time we see him, he's in a bar and he like beats two guys up with like a pole, like a pool stick or something like that. So like, he's just like your typical like, oh, I'm like your badass character. There's not much to him. And then like I guess Brie Larson's character is a little more interesting because she's like an anti-war photographer and she comes into like some like a little bit of conflict with Sam Jackson's character because he's someone that he didn't want the war to end. He wanted to finish it. So like there's a interesting line when those two meet for the first time where it's like, oh, it's people like you that are the reason why we pulled out of the war or something like that. And then she's like, oh, well, don't blame me for losing the war. So that was a little interesting to see those two interact. But like I love the Vietnam soldiers, man. Like especially, I don't remember the name of the actor, but that one African American gentleman. I don't remember his character's name, but you guys know who I'm talking about, right?
I think so.
Yeah, like I loved his character. Like some of my favorite interactions are like, let me
Are
think
you talking
here.
about the Vietnam soldier?
Yeah,
Uh, Glenn Mills, the guy who was always like bantering with the other soldier.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, because like some of my favorite interactions were like because they're like walking through like the bamboo forest, and he's like, oh, next time we see that giant ape, it'll be like the lion and the mouse, and then he's like, you do know that story is about the mouse becoming friends with the lion, right? And he's like, no, my mom told me it was about the mouse getting the thorn and killing the lion. And he's like, who told you that, man? Like, just little interactions like that. And then another one of my favorite parts is it's like right after Kong attacks them. And then he's like, dude, how do you even have an appetite right now? We just got attacked by a monkey the size of a building. And then the guy responds with, yeah, that was a pretty unusual encounter or something like that. It's like, like just little moments like that crack me up. And then, yeah, John C. Riley's character was great. He has a ton of great lines. Like, I love that one part where they're like trying to rebuild the boat, and like he's trying to catch up on current events, and they tell him that we sent a guy to the moon. He's like, oh, what? They just leave him up there? Oh, what's he eating? Like just little things like that are what help, in my opinion, make these characters great. And then like I thought John C. Riley. I thought John Goodman's character was also kind of interesting because like he knows that there's more to this island than he's letting others know, and like he has that one like tense scene with Sam Jackson where Sam Jackson pulls the gun out on him and he's like, you're gonna tell me everything. And then John Goodman's like, well, monsters exist and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool.
Like, nah, really? Monsters exist? Wow.
Yeah, so like just that little interaction was kind of cool. Also, Sam Jackson's character has a stupidly like awesome line near the end of the movie. It's that one part where he's like, "It's time to show Kong that man is king." Like that's such a stupid line, but it's awesome. It's stupidly awesome. I love it.
I mean, there are some good lines in this movie, but I don't think that really excuses the fact that these characters are very flat. Like, you were talking about Tom Hiddleston character and Brie Larson's character. Like, they're the most bland, nothing characters.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'll give you that because yeah, like I said before, there's not much to either of their characters.
yeah.
So I'll give you that.
Like, Tom and Brie did a good job with what they had, but they are not. I personally do not think they're the right people to be in those roles. Like, it just doesn't vibe right for me. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's because, like, people are ultra obsessed with Tom Hiddleston and I just don't get it, especially with Loki. So I'm just like, he was okay in this. Like, he's an all right actor. So is Brie. Like, they're very talented people. Like, they're good actors. It's just I don't feel like they were the right fit for these characters. And I wish that they would have brought the scientists along and like had more science stuff, because this movie majority is soldiers with gun shoot things. Where it's like, okay, so John Goodman or Bill Randa's character, like that's his character name, like knows all this stuff, right? So why wasn't that stuff shared? And I don't know if that's because this movie was made in like 2017 and they just hadn't figured things out yet, or if we'll get more information with that in the Monarch show.
I
I
will
don't know.
say, because you bring up the Monarch show, I do kind of think it's more along the lines of they just haven't figured anything out yet. Because there are some things in the Monarch show that I feel kind of contradict what happens in this movie, especially with John Goodman's character. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to the Monarch show.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, okay, but that show and the scientist, but then there's nothing at all in this one. I don't know. I just wish they would have explained the science a bit more. Like, okay, what is Monarch? What are they doing? Because they don't really talk about that.
I feel like Monarch is more of just like a vessel to get us to the island in this movie, and really the idea for the movie is what if Kong but Vietnam War. I don't really feel like the pitch for this movie is anything but that.
And I
Okay.
also feel,
Yeah.
just really quickly to answer your question, like, what is Monarch? I kind of feel the answer to that is kind of think of it like, you know, the X-Files, where it was like a secret government organization that goes out and tracks down like aliens and whatnot. Monarch is that, except they track down giant monsters, not aliens.
But yeah. But like, they never say that.
Yeah, that's true. They kind of don't. But I mean, they kind of allude to it though, because I'm pretty sure at the beginning of the movie, when they go to like convince that senator to give them funding for the trip, like he says something along the lines of, "What crazy monster are you guys hunting now?" or something like that. So, I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I
that
guess
and
so.
like, weren't they in Godzilla 2014 as well? Like, also,
Yeah.
yeah. So I feel like, I mean, it was already established that they specialize with kaiju
Well,
and
it's
following them around the
interesting
globe.
because once again, like it kind of, because with this, I don't really, because I don't want to get into the specifics, but I feel like once again, this cinematic universe was kind of, they were kind of just playing it by ear, which I guess is kind of per the norm with cinematic universes. But like in Godzilla 2014, they explained that Monarch was created to study Godzilla. But then it kind of shifts into, okay, Monarch wasn't created to study Godzilla. Monarch was created to study these titans. So, you know, they kind of shift perspective and motivation over the years.
I guess,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think the general idea though is just that like they're this organization that's meant to be tracking and documenting and studying the kaiju, which I think that itself, just like that plainly, has been pretty consistent throughout the MonsterVerse, even if they change like the wording a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the other movies and my brain's just coming up short. So like, they explained it in the other ones. I'll take your guys' word for it. It's just like watching this one. My brain was like, what are they talking about? Even though I know this stuff, they clearly said it.
Well, not only that, but once you watch the Monarch show, like that'll give you a lot more insight as well.
Mm.
It definitely sounds like the Monarch show is what you want, Miranda.
Yeah, I do love some scientists and not the explodey bits where they shoot things. Like, I much prefer the science.
I mean, do they focus much on science in like Godzilla movies and like other kaiju movies?
Depends on the movie,
Just saw
really.
the time. Like,
I mean, they
Is
focus
it
on the
really a
science.
focus though?
I mean, they talk about the science a little bit at the beginning of the movie when they're presenting the plan to everyone, doing the like PowerPoint presentation or whatever. They talk
yeah,
about the
like,
science a little bit.
like when I say scientists, I don't mean like scientists. Like, I mean like people who study these things, these creatures, right? They're like trying to figure out things, or like they're professors in something, like Mr. Oda in Godzilla -1. Like he's smart, he knows science, he's like an engineer. So like the more thinky side and the less like I guess the more less fighting side of stories when it comes to like kaiju and Godzilla and whatnot.
I was gonna
Like,
say oh, go ahead.
oh, is this making sense?
I
Well, yeah, I
mean,
was gonna say
yeah. I guess just like I just don't feel like a lot of the movies focus that much on, like obviously it has to come up because usually it's like some scientist that comes up with some sort of way to quote unquote defeat the monster or whatever, but I don't feel like outside of that or like an occasional thing that they need to grab, like the science plays too much of a part, but I don't know. Maybe I just haven't noticed it that much.
Well, I was gonna say I think we're finding out what we like to see out of kaiju movies, like because I like city destruction scenes, and Miranda likes scientific explanation scenes.
I guess.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's interesting.
yeah, but jumping back, Udi, you said it was more like King Kong meets Vietnam War, and I think that's a great description of this movie. That's like very accurate.
Yeah, like I feel like that was just the pitch that I mean, I don't know if he did pitch, I'm assuming, but if like Jordan Vogue Roberts just walked into the boardroom and was like, "All right, imagine this, King Kong in the Vietnam War," and they're like, "Oh my God, you figured it out," and then that's they got to work. Because
Not,
yeah, I mean, I don't feel like this movie has a lot more depth than just that.
yeah.
Nah, not really.
Which again, like I'm not expecting depth out of like a kaiju movie, but not that there can't ever be any, but I don't expect it. So when it hits me, it's a nice surprise. But yeah, this definitely is just more of. I mean, like I would say, in my opinion, the strongest point of this movie is the visuals. Like, it's a very pretty movie. It does probably go a little bit too hard in the post processing effects, but outside of that, like the cinematography is kind of interesting. There's a lot of color. The blocking for like the action fighting sequences is pretty good for like Godzilla versus the skull crawler, or Godzilla King Kong versus the skull crawlers. But um yeah, outside of like the visuals, there's not really a lot here.
We'll say the visuals are a very strong point. Like I love the scenes where like it's kind of just Kong's like silhouette against like the sunset. Like
Yeah.
those are cool scenes, though it kind of doesn't make sense in the context of the scenes because like the lighting completely changes. But who cares? It's a cool visual.
They're just like, it's cool, we're gonna do it. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, like you could say that it's just like because the camera is like simulating shooting against the sun, so like it'll increase the contrast and make like it'll make the colors change like if you were shooting directly at the sun. But I mean, yeah, I did kind of notice that too. Where sometimes I'm like, I feel like the lighting just changed like 3 different times in the last 5 minutes. But I just kind of try to take it as that like that shot of the silhouette of Kong in the sun. I was like, well, I guess if you shot at the sun, I mean, there would just be an increase in contrast and saturation. So kind of makes sense. But yeah, I get what you mean. I guess to answer real quick, my thoughts of the characters. Well, I guess before I answer, did you finish, Miranda? I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, I was just gonna jump in whenever I had something to say. I mean, I don't like. I wish there was more scientists. The military shot their guns a lot. Like, there's not.
I was gonna say
I don't know. There's not much more for me to say.
I was gonna say technically there was a lot of scientists because during that like meeting scene there was like a whole like the left side of the room was just full of scientists, the people in like the blue jumpsuits. But yeah, we don't
But
really
like
get to see a lot of them.
95% of them get killed in the opening
Yeah,
shot with all the
that's
helicopters.
what I was saying. We don't get to see a lot of them. So yeah,
We get to see Kevin or Sean, depending if you're watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Good Place. I think. Yeah, I don't know his real name. He's one of
I
the
think
scientists.
I believe it's Mark Evan Jackson.
Seems right. And then there was the girl scientist, the woman scientist, and then like the guy that they paired her up with, and then John Goodman, right? Was that the only 4 that survived?
Well, John
Oh,
Goodman
and
didn't
the other
survive
one.
till the end, but yeah. In the initial attack, yeah, those are the ones that
Yeah, he
survived.
didn't survive, no, but yeah, there was her, Houston Brooks, John Goodman, and then the guy with the mustache. He was like, "I'm not getting on that helicopter," and then
Yeah.
proceeds to get in the helicopter. And then there
Okay.
was also that other guy. I don't remember his name. I don't even think they ever said his name. But he's like, I don't even know how to describe him either. But there was another guy.
So there was a chunk of them.
Yeah.
And a chunk of like the core military people. Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to add about the characters. So Erdy, if you want to talk about them, go right
Okay.
ahead.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like outside of the visuals, there really isn't a ton to this movie. I don't feel like none of the characters are really characters. They're more just like caricatures or just like very flat. Yeah, just very flat, I guess. But like that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not enjoyable to watch. Like they still provide entertainment, and I feel like for being basically just like caricatures or like cliches, like they fit those roles well. Um like Samuel Jackson does a good job of being like the grizzled war general who, like is trying to find meaning in it all and is just like super antagonistic. Like that character is annoying, but he does the role well. Like he plays the role well. So
I feel like his character has a death wish. Like he doesn't want the war to end because that's the only thing he knows is the war, and the fact that it's ending, it's like causing so many issues for him that he's like, well, I'm here, I have to fight Kong, even though literally every other person was like, probably shouldn't do that.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's a mix of like that and then also just not being able to reconcile that after everything that they went through in the Vietnam War that like they lost and they have to retreat. I feel like it's like a combination of both of
Oh,
those things.
excuse me, Udi. According to Sam Jackson, they didn't lose the war; they abandoned it.
Sure, buddy. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like he does his role well, and then like Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson. I mean, I really like them, and while I agree that like this is a role I never would have expected Tom to be in, I feel like he's like more suave and in a way like a bit more sophisticated than like this role kind of is. Like I feel like he like I not necessarily, but like I could see him more as like James Bond and not so much as like a mercenary getting in a bar fight in like an Asian country in the Vietnam War. Like, you know what I mean?
I just thought of something. This role would have been perfect for Jason Statham.
No, take that back. We don't need Jason Statham in the MonsterVerse. Stop it.
I mean,
What, you don't
could
like
tie
Jason
it into the
Statham?
Meg.
You were just saying that this role doesn't really, you don't think this role really fits him that well. Are you denying that it wouldn't fit Jason Statham well?
We don't need to Meg this MonsterVerse, all right? I
They
mean,
should
yeah.
totally add the Meg to the MonsterVerse. I think it'd be a great decision.
Let's think. We gotta stay on topic.
This is topic. The Meg is a
No.
kaiju.
No, it's not the MonsterVerse though.
Hey, we'll see in the new one.
No, it's not. But I mean, yeah. I guess technically speaking, like Jason Statham. I guess if you could find literally no one else on planet Earth to play this role, I guess would be
Jesus Christ! What did Jason Statham do to you?
Nothing, but he's not a good actor. He just plays Jason Statham in every movie.
I think he's better than like The Rock.
He has more charisma than The Rock, I guess, but I mean, it's not. I don't know. I don't think it's saying much. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
We don't need The Rock in another jungle movie, unless it's Jumanji 3, 4, whatever it would be called. Anyways, continue.
that being said, like I still thought that Tom did a good job. It's odd because I would not have expected him to take a role like this, which is interesting. But I mean, I still think all things considered, he played the part well. And then Brie, I don't know. Like from what you said, Miranda, I felt the complete opposite. I feel like this is exactly the kind of role that Brie Larson would take, like an
Hmm.
anti-war photographer. It was like a strong, like pronounced character who doesn't take crap from anyone else and like stands her ground, and like does things that she believes in. Like I feel like that's very much in line with like a lot of Brie Larson type characters. But
Okay, I
um,
guess if you put it that way, that makes more sense. I just, I don't know. It's probably because this is a really dumb thing. She holds her camera weird. Like, I don't, it irritates me. And obviously that's not her fault or like anything. It's just a brain thing, but maybe that's influencing this.
I don't know, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really notice her holding it weirdly at all. The one thing that I even tried to Google it and I couldn't find an answer, that I don't know if it's actually true or not. I mean, maybe, but like I don't know that it would produce enough light. Was when she was like, "Oh man, my flash broke. If only I had some sort of light." And then Tom Hiddleston comes up like, "Oh, I have a lighter. Perfect. Let me use this lighter as like a long exposure." I'm like, "Would
Uh,
that work? That's not really a lot of light."
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
I don't think that's gonna work.
Yeah, like that was the only part of the movie where I questioned the photography aspect of like the movie. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I was like, I don't think that would work. Like, I have a background in photography, and you need a lot more light than a freaking lighter for like
Yeah.
which she holds to the camera for like 5 seconds, and I was like, I don't think that you're not capturing
Yeah.
that, especially not on
No.
film. Sorry. But aside from that, that was just a minor nitpick. But yeah, I thought she did well and she played the part well. Um, which I mean, you didn't say that she didn't play the part well. You just
No.
said you didn't care too much for the roles, I guess, of hers or Tom's or
Yeah,
them
no,
in the
I
roles.
think they played them well. I think
Yeah,
pretty much everyone in this movie plays their character well. I just wish that they would have expanded a bit more on their two characters.
yeah,
Same with like the scientists. Like I don't really need the military explained. They can
yeah,
just be them. But like you have all of these characters. Like and yet none of them are really ever explained in a way that feels like, okay, I get it now. This is that type of character. But that could be because they're more one dimensional characters, and this isn't meant to be like a big character study of these types of characters.
yeah. And I feel like in a way because they had such a large cast of characters and because they planned on killing so many of them off, that might have been by design. But I mean, I agree that like they could have used more depth for sure, or at least a bit more. Like it might have been better if they halved the cast and then just developed the main, like the ones that were remaining a bit more, and that way when they died, you felt a little bit of something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the only death that they really tried hard for was Shea Wiggum's character when but like, it just felt so sudden. Like they're just walking, and he's like, "All right, that's the end of the road for me," and then just like pulls two grenades out. It's like, buddy, what? What? Like, what are you gonna do with two freaking grenades? Are you kidding me?
Well, not
And
Nothing.
only
then,
that, but his plan hilariously backfired.
yeah, like I was like, what? It's like, okay, sure. I was like, I mean, like, they really tried to like, this was like the emotional like death, but I was like, this really didn't land because it was just so stupid. Like, I love Shea Wiggum, and I think he, again, I mean, we agree. I think we all agree that they all played their characters well, whatever. But yeah, it was just really dumb. um, that being said, they did this one actor that I like. They did him dirty every single movie apparently does. Toby Kebbell, I'm not like a huge Toby Kebbell fan or anything. Not that he's been in that many movies or projects, as far as I know. But I feel like he's been an interesting actor, like on screen. Like he has a good persona, and he like his accent in this was okay and stuff like that. But he always ends up getting killed in like everything that he's in, and it's crazy.
For
And
those
then
who don't know who you're talking about, who are you talking about?
Toby Kebbell plays Major Jack Chapman. He's like the helicopter pilot who like ends up being alone, and then he ends up getting eaten by the skull crawler.
Okay, that's who I thought, but I just wanted clarification.
He was the guy that was there when Kong fought the squid, right?
Yeah, he was the guy witnessing that. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Just a quick rundown of a couple of other notable roles. He was in an episode of Black Mirror in the first season. I think it was like I don't even remember which episode it was, but he was like in the one where like you can like watch memories or whatever. Then he was supposed to be Doctor Doom in Fan Four Stick, which we all know how that went very well. and then he.
I don't want to interrupt real quick, but there's still some poor sap out there that's waiting on the train cut for that movie.
Let it go. Like, look, I kind of enjoyed that movie. I think more than most people did. Not saying it's good, but like I feel like the idea behind the seemingly vision behind that movie was super interesting. But no cut of that movie is gonna make that turd good. Like, yeah. Anyway, unfortunately, he got to be the worst Doctor Doom yet. By like, if anyone is able to make a worse Doctor Doom than Fan Four Stick, they honestly deserve a prize because that was terrible. But anyway, he was also in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. He played Koba, I believe, like the antagonistic gorilla, ape, monkey.
Not a monkey. They do not have tails. They are.
He was a chimpanzee, but that's besides the point.
There we go. Okay, I was looking for confirmation. I was like, I'll just keep saying different kinds of.
I was gonna say, yeah, wasn't a gorilla, but yeah.
Okay, yeah,
definitely
chimpanzee.
Not a monkey though.
Yeah.
You know
I
what?
knew that was wrong.
I think he was a bonobo, actually, not a chimp. A bonobo.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Regardless, Koba. He played that role, and then it's actually funny because in this, I just realized he played Jack Chapman, but apparently he also did the mocap for Kong. So that's kind of funny.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That is funny.
Yeah. But yeah, so I will say though, like I do like him, and I thought, like I said, his accent was pretty good in this. But he was way too calm during the Kong attack. Like he's getting like hit, and like his helicopter's going down. I was like, oh man, got hit by a branch. I guess I'm going down. I was like, why are you not freaking out? You're saying this so calmly. But yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it's the experience of war has changed his reactions.
I don't know if seeing a giant gorilla is Kong a gorilla?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if seeing a giant gorilla equates to war experience. I still feel like people would freak out.
I mean, I guess that's fair. At the moment I said that, I was like, oh wait, that one guy was freaking out the whole entire time with the radio. So
I also like how after the Kong attack, you got that one, that one kid from Detroit. He's like, "Are we not going to talk about this? Are we seriously not going to talk about this?" Like it was like, "Yep."
I mean, yeah.
I mean, what is there to talk about?
It's a giant gorilla.
Exactly, just giant gorilla. Hate it when that happens.
Third time this week. But yeah, so like Toby Kebbell, thought he was way too calm, when he was crashing, and then he died super quickly, and I was like, of course he did. And then the rest of the cast, like I like John Ortiz, Corey Hawkins, John C. Reilly. John C. Reilly's character also, like I liked him, but it felt like he was so random. Like like he'd be totally normal, totally fine, having a normal conversation, and then all of a sudden he's like, "I'm gonna kill you by the end of the night" or something. It's like, whoa, like what? Hello?
See, that's what made his character funny to me. Is he just randomly says that? Like, I don't know. I found that funny.
Like it is kind of funny. Like it is. I definitely laugh, and I'm like, hello, because it just comes out of nowhere. So I don't know. Like I like his character, and like I like John C. Riley, but I do feel like his character overall, just like I don't feel like they didn't know which direction to take him in, or maybe it's just that he's like the only English speaking guy on this island who's been there for like 40 years, so he's a little kooky, which understandable. So maybe it's just that. I don't know. But yeah, he was
I think
fun.
that's
I liked him.
probably what they were going for.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Because
like
go ahead.
he lives on a whole island where the people don't talk. They don't
Yeah.
speak English, and the other person there who wasn't from the island is Japanese. So it's like, well, got that weirdness to it.
Yeah. I do have a feeling that they like might have taught each other how to speak each other's language a little bit, because like he seemed to have a pretty good grasp on like what his buddy thought or felt and stuff like that. So I have to imagine that it was more than just like miming it after like 40 years. But yeah, I don't know.
I was gonna say, because you had mentioned before, Udi, where you're like, I wasn't sure what direction they wanted to take John C. Riley's character, and I kind of agree because at times it seems like, okay, he's gonna be like the kooky man who's been on this island for like 40 plus years, but then at other times it's like, oh, he's just somebody who's finally happy to have possibly found a way to get off the island, and he's he just wants to go home. Like at times it didn't seem like they were sure what they wanted his character exactly to be.
Yeah. I think that's probably. It seems like that's how it felt, but yeah, I'm not sure. Speaking of that, though, because I wanted to see something earlier. You were like talking about that one scene where they're trying to catch him up on like pop culture and like events that have happened around the world and stuff like that. I was like, oh man, this is the Captain America segment of the movie. I like it.
Yeah. And once again, just like the little little like interactions that happen, like John C. Reilly's like, what about the Cubs? They ever win the World Series? And that one guy's like, oh, no way. And then he's like, well, what's your favorite team? And he's like, oh, I'm from Detroit. And he's like, oh, so you're a Tigers fan? He's like, who would win in a fight, a tiger or a cub? And he's like, well, the tiger, because the Cub's just a little baby bear. Like little interactions like that are just, I don't know, they're just really funny to me for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I like how he's like, you got to think it through.
Like, yeah, you got to think it through.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And the kid's just like saying like he's just kind of messing with him.
Exactly.
And also like he's like, what is this? What happened to swing music? And when he's like playing the radio or whatever.
That too.
But yeah, just to quickly wrap up, so I like the main cast. I thought they all did a good job with what they had. Obviously, I don't think any of the emotion really landed. Like the ending is sweet, but I mean, again, I don't feel like any of it really felt too earned. Like I just don't feel like they did a good enough job of developing any character. But I think they played their parts well. And then as far as like the scientist versus like the military thing, I think like that could have been an interesting idea to tackle in the movie. Like, not that that's what we're talking about. Like, I just feel like that as an idea, like sort of intelligence, like brains versus brawn, like that could have been an interesting sort of thing, but they definitely didn't tackle that at all in the movie. So,
Nope.
Yeah. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Do you guys think that Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston will come back if they ever do another like movie, but in the 80s, since they have them in that interrogation room at the end?
I mean, like, I think it would have been cool, but I feel like they probably would have done it by now. And I feel like at least Brie is. I mean, I'm not saying she wouldn't come back, but I feel like she's a big enough star that like she doesn't have too much incentive to come back unless she just really likes the story or something. However, not to get off topic, but there's a character in King of the Monsters that some people theorize was going to actually be Tom Hiddleston's character. It didn't end up being, Like I'm pretty sure it's like definitive, like it's not because it's a different person, like their name is different, whatever. But like when they brought that up, I was like, man, that would have been such a cool idea. I'm kind of bummed they didn't do that. But anyway, sorry.
Well, speaking of that, there actually is a character from this movie that returns in King of the Monsters.
There is.
Yeah. Well, do you want me to say, or I could say it for the
mean-
King of the Monsters review, but Houston Brooks, he returns in King of the Monsters.
Oh, really? I don't
Yeah.
remember him.
Yeah, I'll point when we do our King of the Monsters episode, I'll point out the scene. But yes, Houston Brooks is in King of the Monsters, so neat little bit of continuity there.
Oh, I guess I didn't remember the name. That makes sense. So it's probably like a different actor because he's older or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
he's played by an older actor. Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay. Interesting. Well, see, they could have had another character from Kong being Kong Skull Island. But what about you, Miranda? Did you answer?
What if I think they're coming back?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
They're not coming back.
Yeah, I don't think that Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson's characters are coming back either, because like you guys had said, I feel like that would have happened by now, because like our quote unquote sequel to Kong Skull Island was Godzilla versus Kong. So
Yeah.
I don't think we're probably ever going to see them again unless they decide to do like a side project that takes place during the 80s, like you had mentioned. But even then, I don't see that being a movie. If anything, it would probably be like a comic or Monarch Season 2 or like a... Because they did release a Skull Island anime on Netflix that is canon to the Monsterverse, but it takes place years after the movie, like current day. But like I could see like
Ends on
maybe
a
an anime.
cliffhanger.
Yeah, and it ends on a cliffhanger.
Which is annoying.
It is annoying. Hopefully we get a season 2.
When did that come out?
It came out last year or 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, if it was last year, I might still get a season 2. It came out 2 years ago. Probably not.
I think it was last year though, so we'll see.
Okay. Well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yep. I mean, maybe they'll bring their characters back, but who knows?
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I haven't even watched Monarch Season 1 yet, but I think if they could get them back even for like a small cameo in Season 2, I feel like that could be fun, but I don't know that anyone's clamoring for a cameo from either of these characters. So
yeah, I mean, especially based off of what you guys have said about how like non-interesting these characters or their two characters are, at least.
Well, I feel like everyone else is, to me at least, everyone else was less interesting. I liked them more than everyone else personally.
Once again, Udi, me and you have opposite reactions.
But I mean, that also might just be because I like Tom and Bree the most out of the cast. But at least, I don't know. I feel like Bree was more interesting. I guess, yeah, Tom's character is very, very one note. Like, he gets the cool action sequence where he goes into the gas with the gas mask and the sword, but outside of that, like...
But then he takes the gas mask off right away and he's still in the poison smoke. Why did he take the gas mask off?
Why did he put it on in the first place?
Because it was poison. Yeah, it was toxic gas. So he put it on so he wouldn't breathe in the toxic gas. But then he takes it off. Exactly. Like, why did
the cool moment ended, Dan? You can't have a gas mask on at the end of a cool moment, all right?
You know
yeah,
what?
you
Fine, I'll
can.
give you that.
No. The power of coolness protects you. So he just needed to get through most of the gas, but then after that, he's fine.
Is that why Brie Larson survives? Because the protection of coolness?
Yes.
Is that why her camera survives too?
Yes.
And the film's perfectly okay?
That's just commentary on how well built old cameras were compared to new ones.
I don't believe it.
So Miranda, you had brought up Brie Larson surviving, because I think you had mentioned this earlier. Kong has some very gentle hands, because my God, the fact that Brie Larson wasn't just a blood splatter in his palm after he got done defeating the big skull crawler, like, he's got some gentle hands.
Yeah, like, I mean, she would have gotten shaken around in his fist. Like, I know it's a movie, and I'm applying too much logic to this, but, like, how are several of these people not dead? I mean, majority of them are dead, but you know what I mean, right?
She would have looked like the sheep Darren Cross experimented on in the first Ant-Man. That's what she
Exactly.
would've looked like.
Except it'd be red instead of whatever color the sheep
That was
turned.
red.
Oh, was it red? Oh.
It was like
It was just
pink.
red goop.
Red goop. Exactly.
Which, side note, he could have just sold the goop guns and had everything taken care of. Like, he didn't need a wasp suit, but this is not us talking about Ant-Man, so we'll talk
Save
about
it for
that
the Ant-Man
later.
episode.
Save it for
Save
later.
it for the Ant-Man episode.
But yeah, so, I mean, like, so we watched the original King Kong together way back for one of our test episodes, which we probably won't ever release because it's not great. But how does, like, this adaptation of King Kong compare to, like, that one or the 2005 one, which I haven't watched? So, like, what do you guys think?
So this is a very interesting question because when I think of King Kong's filmography, now there's not much to King Kong's filmography, but like the 1933 film is a classic, and it, at least I feel like it's a classic, and like I don't, you know, it's kind of a product of its time, and I can understand like somebody looking at the 1933 film through a modern lens and maybe not thinking that it's that great, but in my eyes, it's a classic, kind of like the 1954 Godzilla in some ways. But like the 2005 like Peter Jackson remake, I do like that movie, but it is just way too long. It did not need to be that long. And like I would probably watch the 1933 original over the Peter Jackson remake, and like I honestly think I mean that's a tough question because there are aspects to the Peter Jackson remake that I do really like, and there are some things in that film that I feel are done way better than they are in this movie. So I guess like I would probably watch the theatrical cut of the Peter Jackson movie over Kong Skull Island, maybe. Depends on how I'm feeling that day, because if I don't want to sit through like a 3+ hour long movie, I'd probably watch Kong Skull Island. But I do think in
Wait, but
some
this one's 2 hours, so
yeah.
it's not that much of a difference.
Well, I mean the Peter Jackson movie is nearly 3 hours long, though. But yeah. I guess I would say this probably isn't as good as the Peter Jackson remake or the 1933 original, but it's definitely better than the 1976 remake
Oh yeah, I forgot
and
about that one.
and the sequel to that remake, which is called King Kong Lives. Like that is honestly probably the worst film in the King Kong franchise. But then again, King Kong Escapes, the only like Toho King Kong movie, isn't that great either. So I would say this movie is definitely like in the middle. Like it's not as good as the 33 original or the Peter Jackson remake, but it's definitely better than the 1976 remake and its sequel and the one Toho King Kong movie. So it's like in the middle for me.
Okay. I guess I can see that. Although I've only ever watched the original and this one. What about you, Udi?
For me, between the Peter Jackson King Kong movie, the original King Kong movie, and then this one, I would say almost certainly that the Peter Jackson one is the best King Kong movie. Um, I mean, it is basically just. I mean, it literally is just a remake of the original, just like updated with VFX and a more expanded story. Some might say too expanded. But yeah, I would definitely say that's probably the best King Kong movie, at least for me. Um, and I think kind of like what Dan was saying, it really would depend on the day on which I would prefer to watch, because like Dan said, if I don't feel like sitting down for like a 3 hour long King Kong movie, I would probably rather just watch Kong Skull Island, because uh it may be 2 hours, but the pacing is so breakneck that it does really fly by. Whereas the Peter Jackson King Kong is very meticulously paced, and it can be really slow at times.
We spend an
Okay.
hour in New York before we get to the island.
Yeah.
Okay. I
So-
kind of get it now.
Yeah. But like it's very much an interesting movie where like you get it, you start the movie, and then by the time you get to the end, you're like, oh my god, I went on a freaking journey. Like it's crazy to see like where the movie starts to like where it ends, and like thinking back to everything that happened in the movie. But anyway, um, I can definitely agree with Dan's sentiments that the original is a classic, and I definitely feel like it's something that everyone interested in film at least or kaiju movies should watch at least once. But for me, like it's definitely not a movie I could see myself rewatching much. Like if someone was really curious and they really wanted to watch it with me, I mean I probably wouldn't say no. But it's definitely one of those things where like I'm happy I watch it, but I'm in no rush to rewatch it anytime soon. And between that and the Peter Jackson movie, I would much rather watch the Peter Jackson movie. Um, but yeah, so I feel like if I had to rank these, I would probably put this in between the original and the Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson being number one and the original being number three. So this would be number two. But what about you, Miranda?
Well, I've seen this one and the original, like I mentioned. Um, so I'm just glad that it didn't involve a woman screaming the whole time. So I'll take that as a win. I think this is obviously it's a 21st century take on King Kong. He's also grown a lot from the original. So it's like interesting to see okay, what elements stayed, what was gone. Obviously, this is on an island, so it's not like central to New York City. Um, so like it's very different in that way. Um, but I think they still like kept the kind of like key things of Kong's character. Again, working on little knowledge here, but like he always has some kind of connection with a young woman. Um, whether that be Brie Larson's character, the original um actress from the original, or in Godzilla versus Kong, you have the little girl who I think used to live on the island. So I think they keep that element, which is probably a good thing because that is key to his character. And I like the fact that he's a protector of this island and like he makes sure that the skull crawlers are taken care of, like kind of like is the king of the island and protects it and the people who live on the island. So I like those parts.
Yeah, I agree with you there too, Miranda. Like, unlike Godzilla, I actually prefer Kong to be more of like a good guy than more of like an antagonistic creature. Like, I like the idea of him kind of being like the kaiju superhero because I feel like it just makes more sense for a kaiju like Kong to be more of a protector than like a destructive monster.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, it seems like from the very beginning he was always more of like a protector. So yeah, it definitely seems like it makes more sense for him to be like a hero or heroic figure than Godzilla.
And yet they keep trying to make Godzilla the hero. Like it
Yep.
switches. And like always like very fascinating.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like and we talked about this in our 2014 review, but I kind of liked what Gareth Edwards was going for, where he was like, Godzilla's not really a hero or a villain. He's just a force of nature. But then like Michael Dougherty was like, no, I'm going to go like full on Showa era and make Godzilla a hero. It's just, I don't like it when Godzilla's a hero. It just doesn't work for the character, for me personally.
Yeah, yeah. Like I like the idea behind what Gareth was trying to do, and like wording it like that. Like that sounds very cool. Like, oh, Godzilla is a force of nature. Like that's cool. But yeah, I don't feel like me personally, I don't feel like he did that great of a job, unfortunately, of presenting it that much like that. Maybe it's just the ending that like I can't get out of my head where they're all cheering for him. Like, why would you be cheering for him? This no. but
Exactly.
but yeah. But anyway, coming back to Kong Skull Island. I guess because we didn't really talk about it, how did you guys feel about Kong's design in this compared to his other iterations? I guess like the only real true fair comparison would be the Peter Jackson Kong, because I don't think comparing this Kong with the original or even like Godzilla versus Kong with the original Godzilla versus Kong design would be a fair comparison. But I mean, I guess I'll leave that up to you guys on which one you prefer. But yeah, what do you guys think of this design?
Well, with like, because you brought up the Peter Jackson remake. I mean, all they really did for that is they just took a silverback gorilla and just made it giant. There's not really anything unique to that Kong's design, in my opinion. I mean, I think he might have a scar on his face, so there's that. But that Kong is literally just a giant silverback gorilla, which I mean makes sense because Kong's a giant gorilla. So, but I just feel like the Peter Jackson remake, there's not really anything that stands out about that design for me personally. This design, I do like this design. I think that this Kong definitely has some personality, although at times, especially like back shots, he kind of just looks like a giant Sasquatch. So like there's not much we can do about that, but I'm a fan of this design. I mean, yeah, like you compare this to, I mean, the 1933 Kong was just stop motion, but still, that was like
Yeah.
a filmmaking feat at the time. So
Yeah,
that
was like amazing.
Yeah,
work
so
there. That's like that was the thing they wanted to emulate with Godzilla, but they just didn't have
exactly
this budget to do that or time
Yeah.
or whatever.
And in some cases, this Kong design actually kind of sort of looks like the 1933 design, which is a little cool. I mean, it's not one to one, but like I can kind of see some similarities between the two designs. And then like the suit in King Kong Escapes is awful. Like, because that's a Toho movie and they probably didn't have much budget for the suit. So like that suit design looks awful. And then the 1976 King Kong looks all right. I mean, I prefer this design better, or I prefer this design more than the 1976 one, but it's not a bad design.
The suit that they used for the original Godzilla vs. Kong movie makes Kong look high, like super high in every shot.
Well, dude, let me tell you, it's been a while since I've watched King Kong Escapes, but I honestly think the suit they use in King Kong Escapes is worse than that movie.
Incredible.
Yeah.
When are we watching that?
Oh no. Well, hey, I mean, we could review it one day for Kaiju Korner if you really want to.
Maybe in like 5 years. That's okay.
Well, I was gonna say maybe if we decide to go through like King Kong's filmography, we can do it. But yeah.
I mean, that'd be like 7 movies. That's not that much.
Yeah.
Compared to 38 now Godzilla movies.
You can do Kong after Godzilla. How about that?
Okay.
But yeah, what about you, Miranda?
Well, I just Googled all of the images of King Kong because I don't really know what he looks like other than a giant gorilla, a giant ape. But yeah, the 2005 one definitely just looks like a giant gorilla that they like put in the opposite of a shrinking machine to make him giant. But I do like the design for Kong in the Monsterverse. But he looks like an ape. He feels like an ape. Like they're really good at adding that like texture and the hair simulations, everything with the special effects and CGI on him. They like handle it really well. And he looks really nice. Cuz that's a lot of hard work. Like CGI is a lot of hard work to do. And like I mean, you have the stop motion one, which like I don't know. Like the stop motion one looks like an ape. He looks like King Kong, right? So they kind of like stick with the same elements from that in this new one. I think the design of Kong fits well with the design of Godzilla and all the other creatures, like the skull crawlers and the giant bamboo spider thing and the bug logs and the very cool like buffalo thing they come across in like the water. like it fits for the universe. Or he doesn't look out of place.
Yeah, I want to comment on that actually, because most Skull Island, in a traditional sense, has always just been full of dinosaurs. And I will say, I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get dinosaurs for this version. But the wildlife is interesting because, like you had mentioned, Miranda, we got that giant water buffalo, which is kind of cool. I've never seen something like that before. I mean, giant spiders, so not too impressed by that. Although its introduction is really cool because it's like blending in with the bamboo, and then it like stabs that guy like through the mouth, which was
Yeah,
kind of
that was
awesome.
kind of like, whoa. Okay, that's a twist.
Yeah, like that was kind of awesome. So I'll give them that. And then like the bug log, I guess. I mean, we don't really get to see much of that creature, so there's not much I can say. But I do like the designs of the skull crawlers. I think the skull crawlers are a cool design.
On that note, I don't necessarily mind the design of the skull crawlers, but I really wish that the alpha skull crawler looked a lot different and a lot more menacing. It just looks like a bigger skull crawler, and I thought that was so boring. For being like built up as, oh, it's the big one, it's like, I mean, I guess, yeah, size wise it's bigger, but it's basically the exact same thing as the other skull crawlers. But that's just how I felt personally.
I kind of agree with you. I think it would have been better off if they would have given like the quote unquote alpha skull crawler like kind of a more distinct design. I think that could have been cool.
Like, I thought it would have been cool if like they'd given him legs instead of just like the tail, or or like built up on like the skull design a bit more. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like it was really disappointing. I was like, it's just a slightly bigger skull crawler. That's okay. Like, it didn't seem that surprising that Kong could handle defeating it. 'Cause it's like, well, I mean, he defeats the other skull crawlers so easily. But that's just
Yeah, but this one's big, Udi. The other ones are small.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, Dan had a good point. The 2005 Peter Jackson King Kong is just a big silverback gorilla. Like, there's not really anything to that design. So, So I guess that being said, I mean, I think outright, I feel like this design has to be the best one because, I mean, I guess someone might enjoy the older suit versions, but I think they look way too derpy and goofy for me personally to ever really like those designs. So yeah, I would say I definitely like this design more than I like this version of Kong more than any other version that's previously come out before. And I think he looks even better in Godzilla vs. Kong. So not that he changed too much or anything, but I just feel like he looks even cooler.
Did get a beard.
He did get a beard. I do feel like they made him look a little too like they aged him up a bit in Godzilla X Kong, seemingly. Like, he looks a bit more gruff, and I think his fur is a bit grayish. But we'll get there.
Yeah, they definitely aged him.
Okay, good.
You know, speaking of King Kong movies, I completely forgot about it makes sense that I completely forgot about this. The sequel to the 1933 King Kong called Son of Kong. I completely forgot about that movie. Yeah, that movie sucks. This movie's way better than that.
Son of Kong, no.
Yeah.
Is he annoying as Manila?
No, he's not as annoying. He's like barely, because the movie's like super short, so he's like barely in the movie, but he's like just an albino, like smaller version of Kong. Like that's he fights a giant bear. That's as much action as we get with him in that movie.
Okay.
On that note, I did have one last thing because we didn't really talk about like cons or things we didn't like. Well, we did, but the one main thing that I wanted to get off my chest about the movie that I didn't really like was I feel like I didn't like the editing that much. Like, the movie itself is like breakneck pace, so I mean it's edited for what it's supposed to do, I guess, which I mean is just like it's supposed to introduce you to everything really quickly, get you to the island, do like fight scene after fight scene and like crazy thing after crazy thing, and then kind of just get you off the island, and then boom, like everyone's safe or whatever. And it does that well, so I mean, like, it accomplished the mission. But I just feel like the editing exacerbated all the issues with like the characters and everything. Like, I just feel like it's not. I guess like I'm not trying to say the editing is bad. I just don't prefer the editing because it just made everything feel way too quick and short. Which again, that does seem to be like the point of the movie. So I'm not trying to nitpick it too much, but it's just I didn't prefer it because, like I said, I just felt like it cut from moments too often, but not like the fight scenes. Like I feel like the fight scenes were done well. Like that didn't have a lot of cutting. But does that make sense? I guess, or is this just a bunch of gibberish?
That makes
I mean,
sense.
yeah, I can see where you're coming from. You just didn't like the style that the movie was edited in, which makes sense. I mean, I personally wasn't bothered by it, but I can understand. Based off of everything you've explained, I can understand why you wouldn't like it.
Okay, all right, good. I'm glad
Yeah.
it came across. The fight sequences were all pretty good, and then like the editing of as dumb as it was because he took his mask off, like the gas mask sword fight thing scene, that was cool. That was well done. The editing was good on that. So like again, like the editing wasn't bad. It's just I didn't prefer how overall the movie was edited. But like there in moments, like it was totally fine, if not even like pretty good or very good. But one other editorial type thing that I wasn't sure I felt about was like the needle drops. Like I feel like I mean again, in Vietnam War movie, like that was kind of like the thing with this. So they had a lot of like go to Vietnam War era like songs. Um like they worked, but I don't know. It almost kind of made it feel a bit more cliche because they used the kind of go to Vietnam War era songs. I don't know. That's how I felt. But
Geez, what songs would you want them to use?
I don't know. Like they could have done worse. Like I don't think they did like the traditional the what's the one with the devil? Um
Personally, I think a pretty cliche, and it's a song that they do use is "Bad Moon Rising." Like that's a pretty
oh
cliche
yeah.
Vietnam War song, and they use that
Yeah.
at one point.
Yeah. Again, like in a way, this is kind of like a genre movie in the sense of it's like a Vietnam War genre movie. They are kind of like their own subgenre of war movies, but and that's totally what it's going for. So it makes sense that it's going to go for like the typical Vietnam War songs. But I don't know, just it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like it makes it recognizable, and obviously people like those songs, but it almost makes it feel a bit more cliche because it's just using the same songs that like all these other movies use. I don't know, I'm just kind of like in a pickle there.
Speaking of the songs, I think the needle drops were fine. But going back to the editing, since it is a very fast-paced movie, the editing is very fast-paced, but there are like stylistic choices that I don't really like. Like anytime they decide to show, okay, here's what the camera's seeing, and they're like, oh, she's taking pictures. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, that's odd. Or there's like one thing I really hate in modern day kaiju movies, and just any big action movie really, is the CGI punch zoom. I hate it. It looks bad, in my opinion. Like, you do not need to do a CGI punch zoom. First off, you don't even have cameras like in the time period to do a punch zoom that like cleanly anyways. I don't know.
Could you explain what you mean by a punch zoom?
So, okay. Let's see. Can I do this with words? Okay, so let's say in a Godzilla movie, right? There's a person sitting on the ground, right? And you're like, okay, so this person has like a camera and like they're filming it. So it's kind of a handheld thing, but it's not really handheld because it's CGI camera. And then it goes and it's like really far out and then bam, it's really really close to whatever it was. It's like a really super fast zoom. Obviously you could do that with a real camera. You can zoom in real fast with a camera, but I don't know. It's just like depending on the type of movie it is. It's like if they were to do it in Cloverfield, that's fine because most of that is a handheld footage type movie. So if you have someone holding a camera and it punches in and they're zooming into the thing, that's fine. It's when you have a camera up in the air where like theoretically no one is because they don't have helicopters, and it just goes straight into like Godzilla's face or Kong's face. So it's like a wide shot, and then bam, zoom right up, real up close to his face. Does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed. Well, not disappointed in you, just me in general. I'm slightly disappointed you didn't like the POV shots with like looking through the camera lens, stuff like that. But I mean, teach their own. I kind of like those. I thought they were. I mean, I always kind of enjoy unique POV shots, like for example, like in the Amazing Spider-Man one with all the. I think they might have overdone it in that movie, but like you get the POV shots of like being Spider-Man. I thought that was kind of an interesting touch, but I like in this, like
Yeah.
you get like the POV shots of like looking through the camera lens and stuff like that. And I feel like throughout the movie, they did a lot of that sort of thing where they frame shots using like other things, or like even at the end, they emulate like seeing the arrival of John C. Reilly's character arriving at home, like pretending they film it like if they were filming with like an old film camera or something like that. Which I mean, they might have, but I kind of don't think so. I feel like that would all look kind of digital.
Like that is fine. Like them filming like John C. Reilly's character, making it look old. Like I liked that part. I don't know. There's just something about how they held and used the camera throughout this movie that like irritates my brain. So that's kind of why I didn't like the way they did the POV shots with the camera. Like they do it in Monarch, and it's kind of interesting in Monarch. They like film shots as if you're watching that film being recorded or you're like looking through the viewfinder. It's just this one, I don't know, something about it just my brain's not liking.
I guess one thing we didn't really talk about that I just want to mention real quick is the Iwi tribe. I do like the natives of Skull Island in this movie. I think they're interesting. I think their introduction was kind of cool, the way they're all like camouflaged and whatnot. And I kind of like how they're kind of just a population that is past crime. Like John C. Reilly explains, they're past crime. They just live in peace and stuff like that. Like I did kind of like that because like, and I'm thinking comparing other King Kong movies, like of course like the 1933 original like is borderline just an offensive stereotype at some points, and then like I don't know why, but for the Peter Jackson movie they're just creepy. Like I have no idea why Peter Jackson made the natives in that movie like so creepy, but like they're just straight up creepy in that movie. And then I don't even remember if the 1976 movie had natives or not, because it's kind of like a quote unquote King Kong staple. It's like you travel to Skull Island, you interact with the natives, you fight all the like the creatures on the island, you find Kong and whatnot. So I don't know if the 1976 movie had natives, but I do like the Iwi tribe. I think they're cool, and I think it's kind of lame that they're all just kind of, I mean, quote unquote, not quote unquote, spoilers for Godzilla versus Kong, but they're all kind of like just like dead in that movie. So like I thought that was kind of lame, but I like them.
Definitely like their design, but I definitely feel like they were way underutilized. Like they just kind of appear, then they're there, and then they're just there. It's not like you could make the whole movie not include them, and it would change nothing. I feel like,
I mean, yeah, that's fair, I guess. I was gonna, yeah,
which is disappointing because it looked really cool, and like you said, their introduction was cool, but they didn't really do anything with them,
yeah, they
unfortunately.
don't really have a purpose like in other, because you can't really do like the 1933 King Kong movie without the natives, because they're the ones that kidnap Anne and like well, they don't sacrifice her, but like make her the tribute for Kong or whatever. So, and yeah, these natives, they don't really serve a purpose outside of just having a place for John C. Reilly to stay and give exposition. So
Yeah,
They got cool rock images though in their little cave.
that they do, yeah.
nice little presentation.
Yeah. It's actually really clever and neat way to do like a presentation on that. Any art that is 3D and like does that whole shifting perspective thing, very cool.
Agreed. I definitely feel like the 3D design was interesting, and then all the drawings were. I mean, it was all digital, but all the drawings were interesting. Like I think my favorite one was the one with Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. That looked really cool.
Mhm. I wish that they would maybe expand a bit more on them, but as Dan said, they kind of all die. So that really sucks. We've kind of touched on these things like the story, what was interesting, not interesting, and like I don't really know if we touched on anything around like how it adds to the monsters in the monsterverse. Do you guys want to talk about
Yeah,
those?
what do you mean exactly when you say does it add anything to the monsters?
What I mean by that is like, does this movie help expand on any like obviously we're there on Skull Island that there's monsters here, but normally Kong is just Kong or versus dinosaurs. So like by having this movie, does it add anything or create any interest in like the other monsters? Because like in Monarch, there's a bunch of other titans, and in the other Godzilla movies, there's a bunch of other monsters and stuff. So like, do you think the addition of adding these interesting monsters like add to the universe, add to the lore, add to the movie itself? So I guess it's multiple things.
I mean, yeah, like I like the idea of, just specifically for this universe of there being other titans around because like that's the purpose of Monarch is they're there to track down these titans and ascertain whether they're a threat to humanity or not. Like I do like that idea. I do like the other I mean, we call them kaiju, but in this universe they're called titans. So like I do like the other like titans and whatnot. It's weird though because once again is and I've already bought this up, but it's just I feel like they keep contradicting themselves because they've established in quote unquote monsterverse lore that the Titans come from the Hollow Earth, like that is their home. So how the hell did Skull Island and Kong get here? Like if they lived in the Hollow Earth originally. Like I'm hoping Godzilla X Kong the New Empire kind of explains that, but Godzilla X Kong the New Empire doesn't look like it's going to be very strong in the writing department, so I'm not going to be surprised if they don't really explain that. But yeah, that's I guess the one big question I have is like how did Kong and Skull Island even end up here if like these creatures come from the Hollow Earth?
Maybe they got there the same way the Meg got out of the trench in the Meg. It just
Eh,
happened.
I mean, I guess.
What if the island just came from the Hollow Earth? Like since it's seemingly like not charted or anything. What if it just that's where it came from? It just like got pooped out of the Hollow Earth and landed
Got
in the
pooped out.
middle of the ocean.
I mean, once again, that's interesting, and I really hope someone or something in the MonsterVerse explains that. Like I said, I'm kind of hoping Godzilla X Con explains it, but I'm also not expecting it, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I will say that going into this movie, like going to see this in theaters, if I knew that it didn't, like it wasn't connected to the MonsterVerse, like it was just its own thing, I don't know that I would have gone to go see it like in theaters. Um, like I maybe like I was still kind of interested in it, but I do feel like it being connected to it, I was like, okay, well, like I knew that the following movie after Kong Skull Island was going to be King of the Monsters, and then after that they were going to do Godzilla versus Kong, because that was like their short term plan. So like definitely drew me into it, knowing that like this would somehow tie into Godzilla eventually, and I was interested to see because like growing up, I watched the 2005 Peter Jackson King Kong movie, and I liked it. So I was intrigued to see how they would do that differently. And like from the trailers, it seemed very slickly directed and had interesting visuals and stuff like that. So I was intrigued to see what they were gonna do. And then watching it, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And like you guys kind of brought up before, like a lot of the creatures that are just like in the movie are kind of interesting, like the water buffalo, like the skull crawlers. I guess are kind of interesting. Like the stick bug. I like the stick bug. I don't know why. Um, and then like the spider is kind of interesting too. So I think having like not only just different like weird creatures like kaiju monsters in this movie alone is kind of interesting. Like the designs are unique, but also just like other, I guess, kaiju existing in this universe, or I guess Kong existing in this universe with a bunch of other kaiju is interesting. I guess to Dan's point, like you don't really get the idea at this point, like with this movie, that there are a ton of Titans like there are in subsequent movies. But yeah, I think that having other kaiju and other creatures kind of adds a little something to this. Like if it was just Kong, like I don't know, if it was just Kong and like T Rexes, like that would be cool too. But I feel like it being more unique kaiju and creatures does make it a little bit more intriguing to me, at least. Like, at least more different. It's not just like more of the same. Which again, got King Kong with T Rexes would still have been cool, but I just feel like this was a bit more interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. I was thinking about it. It's like, what is this movie adding to the MonsterVerse? What does it add to the monsters? Does it add to the monsters? Or does it like take away? That's kind of my thought process.
I gotcha. I mean, to be completely honest, I think the only thing it adds to the MonsterVerse is just introducing Kong. I don't really feel like it added anything else. Which, I mean, that's kind of like that. It's just like all the solo superhero movies that you get before like a team up movie. So I didn't mind it. Like it was nice to see what this iteration of the character was going to be like compared to the other like Godzilla and whatever. But yeah, I think that's all it really added, and I think that's okay. I don't think I needed anything else from it. So
yeah, they needed to introduce Kong, and they did.
Yeah.
That's basically what the movie is. So this is Vietnam based, war based, time period based. Trying to think like what would it be like if like the Predator, because that's the only other reference for Vietnam era movies other than maybe Forrest Gump that I have. I don't know, is that Vietnam? I don't know. But like the Predator compared to this, like be interesting. Like would Predator count as like a kaiju or not a kaiju, but a creature that Monarch would study? Or is he too alien-y?
I mean, I don't know, because Monarch's kind of in the business of giant monsters, and Predator's not really a giant monster, so. But I feel like he would, like, fit in their category of, like, strange, unexplained creatures, so possibly.
Now I'm
if they would even
curious.
survive and Predator wouldn't murder them all.
Now I'm kind of curious to see what a Predator versus King Kong, or even better, Predator versus Godzilla movie would be like.
Godzilla would step on him and he would win.
Well, how much prep time does the Predator
Oh my
have?
God, what is he, Batman?
Yes.
Okay, so Predator and the alien from Alien versus King Kong and Godzilla. Who would win?
Once again, Godzilla just steps on. Godzilla just beat Superman. Are you seriously asking this?
Yes, I am seriously asking this.
Okay, but what about an alien? Like, what about a xenomorph predator hybrid? Does that beat Godzilla? How much prep time does it have?
Once again, I just step on him and he's done.
Okay, what if Godzilla gets shrunk though? Then what?
Now that's a more interesting matchup.
Godzilla humanoid?
Godzilla got shrunk down and fought the Fantastic Four back when Marvel was publishing comics for him, so
yeah,
it's happened before.
Honey, I Shrunk the Godzilla.
But anyways, just interesting questions to think about. All right, do we have anything else to add to this conversation? Any final thoughts?
Not really. I guess. Yeah, no, not really.
Yeah, I I think we pretty much said everything we needed to say. I mean, like me personally, like this is for again, I think I said this earlier, one of the weakest MonsterVerse films to me, but it's not bad, and it's definitely one of the most visually interesting ones. Probably one of the most visually interesting, in my opinion, kaiju movies to date, like maybe ever. But yeah, I mean, that's not a
See,
bad movie. It's not like a fantastic movie either.
I disagree with you there. I don't think this is one of the weaker MonsterVerse movies, mainly because, first of all, once again, like I'm not going to defend like the writing or the way that the characters are done, but this is just how I personally feel. I feel like these characters were more entertaining to watch than the characters in Godzilla 2014. I didn't feel like the writing was like just flat out stupid like how it is in Godzilla King of the Monsters. And this movie also doesn't jump the shark like Godzilla versus Kong kind of does with the whole hollow earth and there being like a portal inside the earth. Like don't get me wrong, I like Godzilla versus Kong. It's a very entertaining movie, but it's kind of like just like crazy like in its
Definitely takes a
concept
big
at
step.
times. Yeah, exactly. And like I feel like this film once again just it balances Kong's scenes very well. The fight scenes are very well done. Like you said, it's a very pretty movie, and the characters and like the plot don't quite jump the shark yet, in my opinion. So that's why I feel like this is one of the stronger films in the MonsterVerse, not necessarily the weakest. Even though, like once again, like I'll admit. I do like this film. I do think it's a good MonsterVerse movie, but I will admit that it's not my favorite. But, and this could be a controversial take, I do think this is a better movie than Godzilla 2014. But that's just me personally.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I like me personally, like if you asked me to which one I would rather watch, like this or any of the other MonsterVerse movies, I would choose any of the other MonsterVerse movies. But I definitely agree for sure that like watching any of these human characters is a lot more entertaining and like the writing is a lot better. Not that it's great writing necessarily, but like it's not bad either. But like the dialogue and everything is so much better and less like bad, less cringy, less it's just better overall than like any of the writing in King of the Monsters. Like I really like King of the Monsters. Not to well, I don't want to say this. I guess I'll save it for next episode. But um, like I really like that movie, but the human characters are terrible. Like I don't know. Like we'll talk about it more next time. But yeah, the writing in that for like the dialogue for a lot of the human characters is really bad. And then yeah, like King Godzilla versus Kong. Like that movie is just really dumb. It's really stupid, but it works, I feel like. And I think the big thing for me with this movie in particular is more just to do with like the kaiju that Kong faces. Like I really don't think the skull crawlers is that interesting. And maybe if he'd fought like one or two and then he'd fought other kaiju, like more interesting kaiju, or like at least if the big one had been like a really cool looking kaiju, maybe this movie would like be more interesting to me, but I just feel like it's just lacking to me. Like I totally agree with you that it's probably the most well put together. It's one of the most visually interesting kaiju movies, like I said, probably ever, and especially in the MonsterVerse. Like I like 2014. Um, that I guess that's a good point. Especially after having just watched 2014, I think maybe I would put that below this. I guess, but I do prefer Godzilla and then Godzilla fighting the Mutos. Then I prefer Kong and fighting the Skull Crawlers. Like I like Godzilla more than Kong, and I like the Mutos more than the Skull Crawlers. But and I do like the sense of scale in 2014. But everything else I do feel like is probably better done in Skull Island than 2014. So basically, you're right, but I just don't fully agree personally in my own rankings.
Yeah, and like I said, that makes sense. And like I'm with you there. Like I'd rather watch Godzilla fight the Mutos any day over watching Kong fight the Scarcrawlers. But I just feel like once again that the fight scenes were done much better in this movie than they were in 2014.
Oh, for sure. Especially because there's more than just one of them.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes place in the daylight, and it's not
Yeah.
in the dark.
It's not impossible to see.
Yeah.
But and I honestly, I think most people agree with you because a lot of people really do like this movie, like way more than I ever thought would like this movie. But it's like the one weak link for me in this MonsterVerse where I'm like, it's just missing something. Like I can't quantify it more than just like the qualms I've expressed here. But yeah, I mean, people really do seem to like this movie, especially above a lot of the other MonsterVerse movies. So you're
I
definitely
know.
right.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I mean, I don't know if this has changed with Godzilla versus Kong, but for the longest time, this was the highest grossing movie in the MonsterVerse.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know if it changed with Godzilla versus Kong, but yeah, Kong Skull Island was the highest grossing movie in the MonsterVerse for the longest time. I don't know how much Godzilla versus Kong made though, so.
Well, that one
I,
came out on streaming, so
it was still a
I
pretty good
don't know.
success, though.
Yeah, it was considered a success for the time it came out.
I do think the big thing there is just that it came out during the pandemic, like came out 2021. So I think expectations were also a lot lower. Plus, like after King of the Monsters didn't do that great at the box office, I think like they planned to carry forward at least with their initial plan, like at least get Godzilla versus Kong out, and then they were like, all right, well, if it pitters out, then we'll be done. But then it did shockingly well that they were like, oh, all right, well, let's keep it going, and then that's why we're getting Godzilla X Kong and Monarch and all of that.
Okay, so I googled it. Godzilla vs. Kong from 2021, not to be confused with other ones, made $470.1 million US.
Nice.
And Kong Skull Island made $568.6 million US.
So it's
Nice.
still the highest grossing movie in the MonsterVerse. Okay.
Yeah.
But for earning almost 500 million during still basically the prime time of the pandemic, that's pretty great, especially when it came out day and date on streaming. Like that's
No,
fantastic.
Kong Skull Island got 500 million, not
No, I
Godzilla
know.
versus.
That's what I'm saying.
Wait.
Like for Godzilla versus Kong being released when it did and having
And
it be like a simultaneous release and it doing almost the same numbers as Kong, which came
Oh, that's
out
what you're
during
saying. Okay. Yeah.
nothing. Like that's why it's considered such a great success. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of crazy. And part of me feels like it's because it was one of the first movies to like come back to theaters after the pandemic. At least there was probably other movies that released before it, but I feel like it was one of the first to like release in theaters after every other big blockbuster decided to go straight to streaming. Now, granted, this movie still came to streaming, but yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think it was one of the earliest movies to come out in theaters and also be on streaming because it came out early 2021, like February or March. So
I think it was March.
yeah, that probably makes more sense. But yeah, interesting. People just really like the big monk.
well,
Monk.
he is the original kaiju, so
He's the king.
yeah, that's interesting. Where you're both like on the same page, but yet not on the same page. It's very, very interesting.
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say, Udi, because before when you were saying like, oh, everybody like really loves this movie, but it's just missing something from me. Now, once again, I loved Godzilla -1. I loved that movie, but now you kind of know how I felt, where it was like I just feel like there was just a little bit of something missing for me for that movie.
But you still really like that movie, and not to say that I don't like this movie, but like I think this movie's fine, and I'll get the itch to watch it every once in a blue moon, but like it's fine. I don't love it, or like I feel like you do. Would you say it's fair to say that you love Godzilla -1? You just don't. You're not like head over heels in love with it.
Yeah, I loved Godzilla -1, but yeah, I don't think it was like, because once again, and we had bought this up during our -1 review, I think, but lots of people are acting like it's one of the greatest like movies ever released. Now, don't get me wrong, it's one of the greatest Godzilla movies ever released, sure, but like one of the greatest like movies ever released in 2023. I mean, it deserves to be in like your top 10, but like better, like, well, and once again, we've talked about this before. I know you disagree with us, Miranda, but like I don't think it's better than Oppenheimer, you know, for example. And I just, I just felt like, once again, because you had mentioned that you felt like Kong Skull Island was just missing a little something for you, and that's what I felt about Godzilla minus one. Is it was just missing a little bit of something for me, but it was only missing something for me to consider it like the best Godzilla movie of all time. I don't consider Godzilla minus one to be the best Godzilla movie of all time because I felt like it was still missing a little something. Now, if it would have had that little something, then yeah, it would be the best Godzilla movie ever made in my eyes.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I totally agree with you. I think the idea that Godzilla minus one is one of the greatest movies ever made is preposterous. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I really liked it, but just mind blowing. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess to that point, I mean, it's pretty much like what you said. Yeah, I mean, if it had that little bit of something else, or like I said, maybe all it would have taken would be like if they had done like something more interesting with like the final boss Kaiju, then maybe I would like this movie a lot more. But I don't know. We'll never know. So it is what it is. But what were you saying, Miranda? It's interesting that we are on the same page but not on the same page.
Yeah, basically just listening to you guys talk about how you're on the same wavelength, but like not really. I don't know. I find it interesting. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know how people feel about this movie, and I know I'm, in the grand scheme of things, I'm in the minority of how I feel about it. Because I mean, again, like, it's not like I dislike it or I don't like it. I just don't like. People really seem to like this one. And seemingly, they really do like it because it's still the most successful hit technically as far as like box office goes. But I can see all the points that people make about it, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, or like, yeah, I agree with that, but it's just still doesn't quite hit home with me. So it is what it is,
and that's all right. They're not all gonna have whatever elements you need to make sure that it's good or bad or in between or whatever. There's all kinds of things going on, so it makes total sense.
Yeah. And I mean, for being a movie that I still kind of like, I still like and I still enjoy enough, and I enjoy and really like all the others, like, that's not bad at all. I'm like, I still, today, thankfully, and hopefully the next one, or not the next one that we're doing, but the next one in the Monsterverse doesn't break this, but to have all these movies be movies that I like and I enjoy and I find entertaining, and that there's not a single one that I dislike, that's pretty cool. So I'll take it.
Pretty cool.
Famous last words. What stupid stuff is Godzilla X Kong gonna throw at us?
Well,
Lots.
maybe they'll do tail sliding, and then it'll be the highest rated Monsterverse
Honestly,
movie.
if they
should do that.
If they do the tail sliding move from Godzilla vs. Megalon, that would be kind of incredible, not gonna lie.
That'd be great.
At this point, it is what it is. Whatever. Like, I'm gonna watch it as long as there's good fighting.
Hey,
whatever.
If you want your dark, serious melodrama Godzilla movie, go see Godzilla minus one. So
yeah, we'll just wait for any Toho release.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. It seems like Godzilla minus one has definitely shown Toho, hey, maybe we should actually take our time with these movies and put in like real effort. Because yeah, it seems like Toho is definitely going to start stressing quality over quantity with their Godzilla movies now. So I'm excited to see what the future of Toho Godzilla will bring to us.
Not to will actually you, but wasn't it more Shin that started this trend? Shin Godzilla?
But Shin Godzilla didn't have like the same degree of like positive feedback that minus one had. Because minus one, everybody was talking about this movie and everybody loved this movie. When Shin Godzilla came out, don't get me wrong, there were still a lot of people talking about that movie, but it wasn't nearly as big of a hit as minus one is.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, because
Plus, I just
Minus
want
one
to say,
is like a phenomenon.
yeah, -1's a phenomenon. And I want to say another thing. Like maybe at the time it was a little different, and I think at the time it was a little different, but like pretty much the entire fan base loves Godzilla -1. The fan base is kind of split when it comes to Shin Godzilla. Like everybody seemed to have loved it when it first came out, but as time has gone on, Shin Godzilla start to get less and less love. And like I'm one of those people. Like don't get me wrong, like Shin Godzilla is better than most Godzilla movies, but I think it's a little overrated personally. But that's just me, and we'll talk about that more when we eventually get to Shin Godzilla. But yeah, like but then again, you know, a couple like 5-6 years from now, maybe Godzilla -1 will be looked at in that light, where like maybe everyone will look back at it and be like, oh, maybe it wasn't as great as we all thought it was. Who knows? But that's how I kind of feel like what the difference is between Shin and -1.
Well, saying how much people like to hate on things and like how much Twitter likes to flip flop on how much they love movies, I would not be surprised if in a few years -1 is seen as like this overblown, overhyped movie. But I don't know. We'll see.
We'll just have to wait and see. You know, we're in the moment now. We'll have
Yep.
to wait until the moment's over to reflect on it. So, yeah. Let's move on to our ratings. Udi, do you want to go first?
Sure. I've talked enough about the movie, so I'm just gonna give my rating, but I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5.
Okay. And Dan?
All right. I think I'm gonna go for a 3.5, mainly because this really is like a 7 out of 10 for me. Like this is definitely like a 7 out of 10 movie for me. So if you do the math out of a 5-star scale, it'd be a 3.5. So 3.5.
Okay. I'm gonna give it a 2.5. It's not my favorite, and I don't ever have a desire to rewatch it. Like, it's not bad. It's gorgeous film. So pretty to look at. But characters are kind of lacking in some areas. Interesting fight scenes, interesting monsters, but, you know, that's where I'm at with this one. So let me do the math real quick. The Atomic Lizard's average score for Kong Skull Island is a 3 out of 5. So that was our conversation on Kong Skull Island. Thank you so much for joining us and listening. If you're interested in hearing more, check out our previous episodes, and as always, you can find us on Instagram at Atomic Lizards Pod and on Letterboxd at Atomic_Lizard.